So every year, the Associated Press votes on and subsequently hands out an award to who they collectively deem was the most valuable NFL player of the season. And over the years, the MVP award has grown to become a rite of passage into greatness in the eyes of many within the NFL circle. However, my favorite thing about the award is that it's really anyone's game. The last two MVP awards have been given out to Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, both of which came out of the woodworks and won the MVP award just kind of out of nowhere. So today I want to go through each NFL team and pick the one player from said team who is most likely to win the MVP award. But before we get to that, I want to very quickly take a second to mention that only a small percentage of the people who watch my videos are actually subscribed. So if you do end up enjoying this video, please do consider subscribing. And with that being said, let's get started. Now, a quick disclaimer before we get to the first player of the list. There's going to be a lot of quarterbacks on this list, but I'm going to do my very hardest to try and diversify the positions. As we all know, it's a very quarterback-centric award, and I'd be lying if I argued in favor of a player who plays like O-line or something like that. Starting in the NFC North, the Packers MVP candidate is unsurprisingly quarterback Aaron Rodgers. Now, Rodgers has regressed a little bit in my opinion due to the possible nagging injury since 2017. But that said, last year was a huge step back in the right direction, and assuming he continues in that direction, Rodgers could end up taking home the MVP award once again. The Vikings MVP candidate is quarterback Kirk Cousins. Cousins is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the NFL. Really, at this point, the only thing holding him back is himself, and it's possible that the playoff win in the Superdome could have helped get the metaphorical monkey off his back. If Kirk is able to take the next step, he could very well end up taking home that MVP award. The Bears MVP candidate is linebacker Khalil Mack. Despite a relative down year in 2019, Khalil Mack still stands tall as one of the best defensive players currently in the NFL. He'll look to rebound in 2020 and could end up taking home the MVP if he has a season similar to the one he had in 2018. And the Lions MVP candidate is quarterback Matthew Stafford. Prior to his injury, Stafford was putting up elite individual performances last year and was really a dark horse MVP candidate. The Lions have always been notoriously bad, but that does not mean a guy like Stafford couldn't take the award home. Moving into the AFC North, the Browns MVP candidate is quarterback Baker Mayfield. Recency bias has really hurt the perception surrounding Baker, and I think it's somewhat unfair. Cleveland was an absolute dumpster fire in 2020, yes, but I think we can blame a grand majority of that on Freddie Kitchens and his coaching. If Stefanski can get something going, don't be surprised if Baker becomes a possible MVP candidate. The Ravens MVP candidate is quarterback Lamar Jackson. Only 4 players have ever won consecutive MVP awards in NFL history, and in 2020, Lamar will look to join that elite group of players. The Steelers MVP candidate is defensive end TJ Watt. Watt has been a harbinger of chaos since he entered the league in 2017 and has only gotten better and better in every measurable statistic as the years have gone by. With this trend in mind, Watt is primed to have a historical season in 2020 that could end with him taking home the MVP. And the Bengals MVP candidate is running back Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon is silently putting up numbers likened to some of the top running backs in the league, and heading into his prime years, Mixon could end up kicking things into high gear in 2020 and take home that MVP. Heading into the NFC East, the Eagles MVP candidate is quarterback Carson Wentz. The Eagles were riddled with injuries in 2019, and Wentz still managed to carry the team to the playoffs. There's an argument to be made that he was the most valuable player of 2019, but assuming the Eagles can stay healthy, Wentz may just be able to win the MVP award. The Cowboys MVP candidate is quarterback Dak Prescott. Dak will be a dark horse MVP candidate throughout 2020, and if he manages to somehow come out as the league's MVP, Jerry Jones will absolutely have to give him the long-term contract. The Redskins MVP candidate is defensive end Chase Young. This one will inevitably turn some heads, but simply put, Chase Young is built different. I would not be surprised if he comes flying onto the scene like Nick Bosa did last year, and with some saying that he is better than Nick Bosa, we could have a surprise brewing out in DC. And the Giants MVP candidate is running back Saquon Barkley. Following an injury-riddled 2019 season, Saquon is looking to prove that his freshman season wasn't a mere fluke. With the Giants having a pretty lackluster team surrounding him, the Giants' future rests pretty much solely in the hands of Saquon Barkley. In the AFC East, the Patriots MVP candidate is cornerback Stephon Gilmore. The best cornerback in the league, Gilmore locked receivers down week in and week out throughout the 2019 NFL season. With Brady gone, he may very well become the face of the New England Patriots, and if he continues to trend upwards, he could end up taking home the MVP. The Bills MVP candidate is quarterback Josh Allen. I wouldn't say that this is likely, but with the inherent quarterback bias in mind and the expectations set for Josh Allen, now that he has Stephon Diggs, Allen may just have a breakout year that is MVP worthy in 2020. I wouldn't bet on it by any means, but I'm not writing him off entirely. The Jets MVP candidate is quarterback Sam Darnold. Darnold is entering a big prove-it year, and with the newly bolstered O-line and Flacco there as a veteran presence to mentor him, he could end up surprising in 2020. And the Dolphins MVP candidate is cornerback Byron Jones. Similar to the Bengals, the Dolphins are in full rebuild mode, and that said, Byron Jones could seriously help propel the team's defense in 2020. And while the chance of him winning MVP is slim to none, he may be looked at the very least, the Dolphins MVP by the end of the year. Heading down to the NFC South, the Saints MVP candidate is wide receiver Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas has proven that he is the best workhorse wide receiver in the league, and I think he will definitely be a dark horse candidate throughout the entire season. The Falcons MVP candidate is wide receiver Julio Jones. Another wide receiver, Julio has been carrying a huge chunk of the load on the Falcons for a couple of years now, and while it's unlikely for a wide receiver to win the MVP, much like Michael Thomas, I do believe that Julio will be a dark horse candidate week in and week out. The Buccaneers MVP candidate is linebacker Shaquille Barrett. Barrett came flying onto the scene in 2020, registering 19.5 sacks and 6 forced fumbles after 5 lackluster years out in Denver. It's safe to say that a change of scenery was huge for Shaquille Barrett, and he could end up pushing it even further in 2020. And the Panthers MVP candidate is running back Christian McCaffery. He carried the Panthers in 2019, and if he manages to put up even similar numbers to what he put up last year, we may just see McCaffrey take home the MVP. In the AFC South, the Jaguars MVP candidate is quarterback Gardner Minshew. The case of this happening is, well, slim to none. The Jaguars are about to enter one of the biggest rebuilds we've ever seen, but since I have to pick one player, I'll take Gardner Minshew. The Colts MVP candidate is linebacker Darius Leonard. Leonard has been a tackling machine since he entered the league, solidifying himself as one of the most dominant defensive players since 2018. The Defensive Rookie of the Year is incredibly versatile and is on the brink of having a historical season. The Texans MVP candidate is quarterback Deshaun Watson. With DeAndre Hopkins gone, Deshaun Watson will have a huge burden on him in 2020. At this point, the fate of the Houston Texans rests almost solely on his shoulders, and if the team manages to make the playoffs, that alone may give leeway for the argument that he should be the MVP. And the Titans MVP candidate is running back Derrick Henry. Coming off of a dominant playoff performance where he helped propel the 9-7 Titans to an AFC Championship appearance, Derrick Henry looks to continue this dominance into 2020. If he manages to take what he did in the playoffs and spread it through a 16-game schedule, he may just very well end up taking home the MVP. Heading out west, the 49ers MVP candidate is defensive end Nick Bosa. Already one of the best defensive players in today's NFL, Nick Bosa was a quintessential piece to the 49ers' 2019 Super Bowl run. He'll look to continue this trend into 2020 and could end up taking home the MVP award if he somehow manages to have an even better season than he did in 2019. The Rams MVP candidate is defensive end Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald is not only one of, if not the best defensive player in the league, but there's an argument to be made that he is the best player in the league, period. If any defensive player is to take home the MVP in 2020, it would have to be Aaron Donald. The Seahawks MVP candidate is quarterback Russell Wilson. No player in the league has carried their team as hard as Russell Wilson has had to over the span of the last 3 years. Russ was my MVP vote for 2019, and if he somehow manages to continue the trend into 2020, it would be very hard to argue against giving him the MVP. And the Cardinals MVP candidate is quarterback Kyler Murray. Following the second-year MVP trend set by Mahomes and Lamar Jackson as of recently, many are expecting Kyler Murray to have a breakout year in 2020 and take home the MVP. The addition of DeAndre Hopkins will pay major dividends, and as of now, Kyler Murray is my pick for the 2020 MVP. And in the AFC West, the Chiefs MVP candidate is quarterback Patrick Mahomes. The 2018 NFL MVP and Super Bowl 54 MVP, Patrick Mahomes' first 2 years in the league are truly unlike any other quarterback in recent history. He is a frontrunner for the MVP award heading into 2020, and I'm honestly not going to be surprised if he takes it home. The Raiders MVP candidate is running back Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs is already criminally underrated and deserved to win the Rookie of the Year over Kyler Murray last year. God damn it. He put up almost 1,200 yards on the ground last year with only 13 games while playing through injury all at the same time. And when it comes to value, Josh Jacobs is about as valuable as they come. The Chargers MVP candidate is defensive end Joey Bosa. The Bosas are just built different, man. Now, I would not say Joey Bosa has a big chance at taking it home like Nick Bosa, but if any Chargers player is to win the MVP, I'd bet my money on Joey Bosa. And rounding out the list, the Broncos MVP candidate is quarterback Drew Locke. Similar to Kyler Murray, many are expecting Drew Locke to have a breakout year and possibly be the player who continues the second-year MVP streak seen with Mahomes and Lamar. The Broncos offense is absolutely loaded, they have a solid defense, and Drew Locke was great in the limited sample size we saw within 2019. He could take it over Kyler Murray and is actually my second pick for the 2020 NFL MVP award. And that will just about wrap it up for this video. But before I go, let me ask you, who do you think will win the MVP award in 2020?